Business of Property podcast. I'm Simon, and I've been investing in property for over 20 years. And if you're an active landlord or planning your next property investment, this podcast is for you. I hope you find this episode useful, and I'd really appreciate it if you could tell a couple of other property people about the Business of Property podcast. It really does help to spread the word and spread the knowledge as well. Today, I'm going to talk about 8 reasons to use a letting agent. Now, that's obviously to use a letting agent to help you manage your rental properties. I often talk about the benefits of self-managing your rental property. That's what I do personally, and I think that is often the best choice. However, it definitely isn't always the best choice. And for a lot of people, the right choice is actually to make use of a letting agent to help with the process of managing your rental properties. And hence, today I'm going to talk about some of the reasons that I think this could well be the case for many people. Now, all of these things that I'm going to talk about today can be done badly. And unfortunately, there are bad letting agents out there, in the same way as there are, unfortunately, bad landlords out there as well. And hence, the things I'm going to talk about are all about the assumption that you are dealing with a good letting agent, of which there are, of course, many, many agents out there who do a fantastic job and take their work very seriously and are very thorough in what they do. And this is definitely an important element in choosing a letting agent that you might use. And all of these benefits really do work based on that assumption that you are dealing with a good letting agent. So let's dive into the list of 8 reasons why you would choose to use a letting agent to manage your rental property. First and foremost is help with compliance and sort of the paperwork side of things. Letting a property is very involved from a legal point of view, and letting agents will stay up to date with the legal requirements. They can help you meet your compliance requirements with this knowledge that they have, whether that might be making sure that you have the right safety checks and knowing which checks you need to do and when, or whether it's around having the right documents that you need in order to be legally compliant and to set up tenancies and to know when and how to issue them in the right time and place in order to keep you protected and fully compliant with the legal obligations that you have. Ultimately, a letting agent cannot relieve you of your legal obligations and your requirements to make sure that the property and your processes and things are compliant. However, they can very much help with that process and help guide you through it. And that can often be an invaluable service, especially if you're just starting out and you're early in sort of your property journey and you just haven't got the experience. You haven't put in the time to learn these processes, or you just don't want to put in the time to learn the requirements and the paperwork and things that are necessary. So that can be a sort of quicker approach to achieving the end goal of compliance, is to leverage a letting agent to help you through that process. So number 2 on the list is getting the price right. Now, there are lots of nuances involved in pricing a rental property. And a local letting agent will know a lot of the local nuances. You can do research, you can find comparables, and you can work out a lot of this yourself, but perhaps you don't want to, or perhaps there are specific elements that you may find it very difficult to discover online. So a good letting agent will help you set a price that's low enough that you can find tenants and minimize any voids, but high enough to make sure that you aren't missing out on potential income. So it is an important characteristic to pick the correct price in that band. Along with having your price set, of course, the next thing is you need to market your property. And number 3 on the list is that, marketing your rental property. And this goes from preparing photos to floor plans to writing the text that would appear on your listing. And in the current market, it's relatively hard to get this wrong because there is such high demand in most areas for rental properties. But in more normal markets, and even now, it is still important to make sure you've got the right information listed, to make sure that you present your property well, make sure the photos are well lit and things like this, just to make sure that you're attracting the best possible tenants and not just any tenants that are out there. You want your property to look its best and to appeal to the best people it can appeal to. Number 4, then, they of course will handle the tenant relationships. They will handle the tenant inquiries. They'll answer the phone, they'll reply to the emails when people are looking for a property to rent or looking for your property to rent. They will then, of course, attend the viewings and look after the scheduling. They will make sure that there's someone there, perhaps them, to actually do those viewings and put the property forward in the best possible light. And then once a property is let, they will continue to handle the calls from tenants. They will be the first point of call, whether that's because something's broken or because the tenant has a question or whatever it might be. They will be that first line. And while you may still end up being involved in the end, there are lots of things where you won't need to be involved at all, or they can at least act as a buffer so that by the time the information gets to you, it may have been through a few rounds of sort of simplification or collecting missing information and things, so you can be presented with everything together. Next on the list then is managing the property maintenance. So as a tenancy goes on, there will almost always be something that needs to be done, needs to be worked out. And when tenants report issues, often you'll need to do some follow-up to that, to get a bit of extra information, to find out exactly what the problem is, and your letting agent will do that. They will also know local people. They will be able to help with you sourcing the correct tradesperson to solve a problem. And then when there is a tradesperson involved, or if the letting agent can handle something directly, they will handle sort of sorting out the visit and scheduling that and making sure that everybody's in the property, or maybe even being there themselves to provide access to the property, or handing over a key to a tradesperson to provide access to a property. They can help liaise with everyone involved and make sure that process works smoothly. Typically, as I mentioned before, you would actually still need to be involved in lots of the maintenance of decisions to actually sort of approve work or to okay costs that are involved, and ultimately to pay for things normally. However, a letting agent will sort of already know who to call. They will know the right tradesperson. They'll be able to shortcut a lot of the processes, and they will handle the process for you as well. Number 6 on the list, keeping up with regular actions. Now, when you've got a tenancy up and running, it's very tempting to just say, okay, that's it, it's done, forget about it, and not pay it enough attention, because tenancies do need attention as they go on, or particularly properties do need attention as they go on. And in order to stay legally compliant, you have to make sure that you renew safety certificates, and you probably want to make sure that you visit your property, or someone visits your property now and then, to make sure that it's okay. So to do a property inspection. And of course, along with that, there are other things that sort of benefit you as well, such as applying regular rental increases. And while you can set up systems and software and what have you to make sure that you do this very easily, a letting agent will of course have their own processes, and they will make sure that they're on top of it, just so that it's not something you need to think about that much. Ultimately, you are still legally required to meet the compliance requirements, so you probably don't want to completely ignore these sort of regular occurrences and reminders. You might need to just double check that something has happened. For example, if a gas safety certificate expires, it's your problem. It's not actually the letting agent's problem, although of course You may then sack them for that having happened, but it's not ultimately going to cause them a problem with the property or with the tenants, or whatever, but it will cause that for you. So they will have processes, they will help with this, and a lot of the time they will handle it for you, really, even though ultimately you're still responsible. Number 7, they will, I hope, normally save you time. And I think this is probably one of the biggest reasons that you would want to be paying a letting agent. Letting agent will cost you money. They will cost a fairly big chunk of your rental income every month. And the real thing you're buying, maybe alongside the compliance, especially if it's early days and you need help and support there, is really a time saving. And lots of the things above that I've already mentioned actually will provide time savings alongside the sort of other elements. But you should, across all of these things, save a fair amount of time. If you've got really good processes and you've got long-term tenants in place, the effect of this time saving will be lower. However, if you're dealing with HMOs or you're dealing with smaller properties where tenant turnover is higher, then the time saving can be more significant. Ultimately, they won't take away the use of your time entirely. You will always need to double check things. As I mentioned before, you're always really the one responsible for compliance, so you need to put some effort in to making sure you're on top of that. You need to make the decisions. If you need to replace the boiler or something, the letting agent may well make a recommendation, but ultimately you've got to make the decision. So you're still going to need to be involved. There's still going to be time from you as a landlord and property owner, but it should be significantly less, especially when handling tenant changeovers. Now, I think number 8 is really the biggest sell for using a letting agent to manage your rental properties. And this is that it can work remotely. So self-managing a rental property locally is, I think, quite straightforward when you've got the right knowledge, when you've got the right processes, you've got the right systems. However, managing a rental property remotely, I think, is very, very difficult. It can definitely be done. I know people who do it and do it very successfully. However, almost always they have at least a local known tradesperson or a local known somebody who can step in and help at relatively short notice to do things that require a physical presence. Because if you don't have that, it will be very difficult, certainly in certain situations. And hence, having a local letting agent to do this for you is probably the answer. It's very difficult to find a new tenant and rent out a property if you aren't physically close to it. Viewings, for example, exceptionally difficult to do. Not impossible, but very difficult. And if you were to go and visit, you'd be taking a lot of time out for sorting out all sorts of things that you would need to do during the life of the property and the life of a tenancy, but especially around tenant changeover times, whether that's checking on the status of the property or working out what needs doing or handling viewings with tenants. Yeah, if you're trying to rent property remotely, then I think having a letting agent help you in that process and manage that property for you is really one of the best reasons for using a letting agent. So that's my list of 8 reasons to use a letting agent to help you manage your property. I'll quickly run through them again before I finish up the episode. So number 1 was helping with compliance and paperwork. Number 2 was getting the rental price right, maximizing your income, minimizing your voids. Number 3, getting the property marketing right. Number 4, handling tenant relations. Number 5, managing property maintenance. Number 6, keeping up with regular actions and regular processes and staying on top of things. Number 7, cutting across all of these things really, saving time. And number 8, being able to do all of this remotely from where you actually are. So that's it for today. I will be back again with another episode like this, but looking at it from the point of view of reasons to self-manage your rental property. I'm not quite sure when that episode is going to come out, but that will be along in the future. So keep an eye out for that if you want to see sort of the other side of this argument and this proposal. But for now, thank you very much for listening. Thank you very much for sharing this episode with a couple of other property people. And I will look forward to speaking to you again next time.